Welcome, fellow business brokers. I appreciate you joining me today. I got to say, we are entering 2021 and it's making 2020 look like amateur hour. We still are dealing with a pandemic. We've got the most unusual, strange political situations going on, and there's economic uncertainty moving forward. So, how is all this going to affect us as business brokers? How is it going to affect the ability to help people buy and sell businesses? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And we've got a very, very special guest with us today. But before I introduce him, I just want to ask you, please subscribe to the YouTube channel down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. Personally, I'd really appreciate it if you did. And that way you're not going to miss any great videos. But let me introduce the special guest we have today. He is a former chairman of the International Business Brokers Association. He's a former chairman of the Business Brokers of Florida. And he is currently the CEO of Transworld, the largest business broker organization in the world. And with 600 agents, it's really important that Andy Cagnetta stays on top of and forecasts what the industry is going to be so he can navigate his company through situations like this. And I got to tell you, it's really great that we have Andy here, because Andy's not only looks out for the best interest of Transworld and the agents with Transworld, but he always looks out for the best interest of the industry itself. And it's greatly appreciated that he's not just sharing his information and his knowledge with Transworld itself, but that he's sharing that information with all of us business brokers out there, no matter what company we're with. Let's get Andy. How you doing, Andy? Thank you for joining us.
I'm doing good. That was a great way to kind of describe what is going on in the world. It is crazy, but I was laughing because even though all that craziness is going on, I think we're still going to have perhaps the best year we've ever had in business brokerage.
Andy, I agree. I feel the same way, and I'm really excited about that. But before we get into 2021, like looking back on 2020, what do you feel like transpired in 2020?
Listen, I'm laughing. One of the reasons I was laughing is I made predictions on the decade. I don't have them here with me right now, but I made predictions about the decade. And of course I didn't predict the pandemic, right? So, on reflecting on 2020, a few things. One, and I just did a little podcast about this too. Do I need my volume up a little bit, you think? So somebody just said volume up. So I'll just make sure that my mic is close. But one of the things that, I think happened was surprising was how fast this all affected us, right? I mean, we're all going about our business, traveling, doing everything. And then a week later, everything shut down. And yes, there was news that things were happening in China, but none of us thought, oh, well, that's in China. That's not going to happen.
We barely paid attention.
Barely paid attention to it. So it was, crushing to all of us to watch the world just basically stop. And, I have to say, as a whole, business brokerage has done well, and I think for a few reasons. I would have predicted also in a pandemic crisis like this, it would have turned from a seller's market, which it's been for about 20 something years, maybe once or twice not being a seller's market, into a buyer's market where sellers were just willing to let go of their businesses at any cost. And that completely has not happened. It's been the exact opposite. Seller prices have stayed steady, if not increased. And then, buyer activity is off the charts. And, and we could talk about all the reasons for that, like unemployment and people just not, and companies not being loyal to their company. So we always see those people saying, hey, if they're not going to take care of me, I'm going to go out on my own.
Yeah. And this is an interesting thing. And I was running some statistics today, or I was looking up some statistics, and I just wanted to read them off real quick. So the Dow ended up the year at 7.3 positive, the S&P up 16.3%, NASDAQ up 43.6%. Holy cow, the technology companies just kicked it in 2020. And the unfortunate thing is right before the pandemic, the unemployment rate was at 3.5%. And I think Andy's going to probably get to this point later. He already mentioned it. But it currently stands at about 6.7%. So we almost doubled the unemployment since, when the pandemic started. And at the worst case scenario, in the end of March 22 million jobs were lost. Now, 12 million of those jobs came back. But we're still down 10 million jobs, which is quite a bit. So, the stock market's doing well. It's, all the stock markets are doing well, and Wall Street's doing well. But, Main Street businesses have been suffering. We've got this another statistic, 4 million, according to the Washington Post, 4 million small businesses went out of business in 2020. So that's quite a bit. And I read this really good quote. The quote is, Wall Street just isn't reflecting Main Street, but the other part is that there is no Main Street stock market. And I thought that was a good quote. So, I think that's what we're saying right now, Andy, is that, stock market's doing well, Main Street businesses are suffering. And what I'm seeing, and I'm talking to businesses, brokers, in Florida and throughout the country, is that some business brokers are doing extremely well. Some are doing mediocre, and some are just been getting killed in the pandemic. And I'm hoping today we can kind of shed light and try to bring up those people that are struggling and try to bring them up, and also kind of forecast out for all of us, whether you're doing bad or good, what to expect in 2021. So what are you expecting in 2021?
Well, a few things, just to talk a little bit about the current economy, the stock market economy, right? So I think one of the reasons why the stock market continues to do well is, where are you going to put your money, right? So how do you put your money to work? And historically, back in the 70s and things like that, people used to be able to sell their business and buy a CD with $1 million and be able to make 7 or 8 or 10%. And you can't do that today. You can't put your money to work. So it all goes into the stock market, or you try to buy a business that is making enough of a return. I mean, there's really no other quote unquote safe alternative. So I think we continue to be an outlet for money, and we see that in private equity and family offices and things like that, because they can't put their money anywhere else and make money with it. Money is so cheap right now. So that's going to continue to fuel 2021, that we're going to continue to see that. And so I think that's one of the reasons why things are going to be really good this year. Yes, there's no business stock market, and we've talked about that a lot. And as an industry, we have to do way more co-brokerage, because I think there is going to be, that was one of my predictions for the next decade, that there would be a stock market or some sort of trading platform for selling businesses. And I keep telling business brokers, we could either be the solution and part of that, or we could be run over like the taxi drivers were with Uber. And just talking about the stock market as far as tech firms, that was one of my predictions that came true much earlier, was that we were going to go virtual with our meetings, and we were going to meet much more virtually. Who knew I was like, 60 days away from that, so when I made that prediction. So there's a lot of things going on for 2021. I continue to think, again, it's going to be a very robust market, and we haven't touched on it yet, but the CARES Act, the second introduction of the CARES Act, number one, great. Thank God there's another round of PPP. And we can talk about that. Oh my
gosh, that's fantastic. The second round of PPP.
It's great. And so I want to talk a little bit about why some business brokers are doing well, but it's second round of PPP. But the once in a lifetime chance of getting an SBA loan last year, where 6 months of your principal and interest were paid for, was a huge opportunity.
Unbelievable, Andy. Unbelievable.
And guess what?
It's even better.
It's back.
And it's better. And it's better because they're waiving the guarantee fee, which is 2.5%, 3% of the loan.
It's insane, to the point where I called up both my daughters. One's living at home right now. And I looked at them and I said, listen, if you guys ever consider buying a business, because this is it, right? Go out and buy yourself a business, get an SBA loan. It'll be paid for 6 months.
I've never, in my 20 years, Andy, of doing this, and I know you've been doing it longer than I have, but in my 20 years of doing this, I've never seen a more aggressive lending situation. I said that last year, and then this year I'm it's trumping I shouldn't use that word, trumping, but it's doing better than last year even, because you've got, you like you said, the 6 months principal and interest paid. You've got the waiver of the guarantee fee to the SBA, which is 2.5%, 3%. So, I mean, that's a lot of money. $1 million loan, that could be $30,000 waived. And then on top of that, and this really affects the banks is the 90% guarantee that the federal government's guaranteeing 90% of the loan, which usually they do 75%. So the risk factor to the bank is only 10%. They're going to lend more money and they're trying to spur the economy is what they're doing.
So they're going to lend more money. Banks are going to be very aggressive in trying to get this SBA money out there in the next 6 months. To the detriment of anybody that was trying to close a deal in January. We saw everybody say, wait a second,
postpone
the deal. Everybody's postponing their deals. And so,
I know the sales in January are going to look pathetic, because at least the SBA ones, because I know that our company, we're a small company. We postponed a couple of deals because of that.
But we also, and the same thing, it'll happen in September again. We had a surge in September. We were talking about it at the end of September, again, when this program will run out, that we saw that, the attorneys, one of the things we were having a concern for is all these deals were butting up against the deadline of September, at the end of September of this year. I think it was the 28th or 30th, whatever. 30th, I think it was. Yeah, but I think 30th was a Sunday anyway, but I think they get their paperwork done. But these are closing attorneys were working 24/7, and we were yelling at all our people, hey, listen, if you think you're going to have a closing, you better get a couple hours of your closing attorney's time, because that's part of that resource that's shrinking. So listen, it's going to be a great time to buy a business. The big whammy in all this is inventory's down.
Oh my gosh, Andy, it is. I looked on the Business Brokers of Florida website today, and we had a little over 2,400 businesses for sale. And so those are the guys that are outside of Florida. Usually we have about 4,000 businesses. So we're down 13% or something?
No, I mean from 4,000.
I'm sorry, you're right. That's a lot more than that. I take my math back.
Yeah, take your math back. That's over 20. It's almost 25%. But listen, so what are we missing, right? So what's happening? And this is part of what happened with the PPP money, I believe, too, right? So 4,000. I mean, how many? 4 million businesses out of business, right? Is that what?
Yep. That's what I saw in Washington.
So what happened to the other ones, right? So that ate into our inventory, and no pun intended. What industry got hit the worst? Of course, the restaurant industry, the tourism industry, anything that had to do with live events and catering halls, things like that. So that inventory, which for business brokers, and not every company, but a lot of business brokers, restaurants is their number one piece of inventory, number one turnover.
Yep.
So that piece is gone. So the business brokers
let me just pause you real quick there, because the new business brokers, it's usually about 20% of all the businesses for sale are usually restaurants. So that's what Andy's saying, or that's wiping out a huge percentage of the businesses for sale right there. So go ahead, Andy, right. I apologize.
So business brokers did less deals last year because those businesses were gone. But here's the good news, right? So the 4 million went out of business, which is a big number, but still not a huge number as compared to the millions and millions and millions of businesses out there. So a lot of them are hanging on, and then they're going to get another little PPP loan. And then hopefully we're going to get as many inoculations in arms, and everybody's going to be back to normal. Let's say end of summer, early fall, hopefully latest, right? That, the world kind of gets back to normal, people going out, people feeling really good about it. So, and I know we're jumping around subjects here, but what I think is going to happen is there's going to be a bunch of sellers that hung on through this, that they kind of get back in the business, and there's going to be less restaurants out there. So the restaurants that stayed and hung in there are going to be busier than ever.
Yep.
And they're going to look at us and say, please get me out of this now. I hung on this long, get me out of here. And I had an interesting call with one of my agents this morning talking about valuation, and that they're already ignoring 2020 on these valuations. They're looking at 17, 18, 19, ignoring 2020. Now, this company that we were talking about that we're trying to get a deal done on had a better year in 2020. So
you're talking about the appraisers are doing that, right?
They're the appraisers. So what's going to happen for the marketplace is once we get back to quote unquote normal, end of 2021, let's say late 2021, and these businesses come back to the marketplace, I think they're going to come back, number one, because they're tired. They got their PPP money and they just want to bail now.
Let me pause you right there, Andy. I agree with you. Like I've owned my first business that I owned. I lost it because of September 11th. And I'm going to tell you that struggle of trying to keep it open and, worrying about making payroll and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it wears on you. So by the time we started a rebound, I was kind of over the business, and I guess that's what you're getting at is a lot of these people just struggle. And you're trying to keep your head above water. You just get burned out so much quicker. So I'm sorry to cut you off, Andy.
No, and along with that, I think there's plenty of empty restaurants. I think that inventory for business brokers, we may still have somewhat of a lag because that inventory needs to be absorbed. So people looking to open a restaurant might be able to just waltz in and buy a restaurant and not buy it, just waltz in and get it. But we all know that many people do not know what they're getting into when they get into the restaurant business. So that inventory will come up for sale too in a pretty short manner. And listen, there's plenty of other industries like the hair salon industry, again, like the tourism related businesses,
spas, things like that.
Spas. I mean, once they get some semblance of return revenues and profits, they're going to look to sell. And there's still going to be plenty of buyers out there. So again, and there's free money and it's cheap. And I mean, like all these things are just kind of lining up to be a really big year for business brokers.
Well, this is what I see. And I know we're talking today about 2021, but let's fast forward one more year to 2022. And this is what I think is going to see, kind of alluding to what you were saying, Andy, is that there's going to be a lot. Let's take restaurants, for instance, and this goes against any of those categories you just named. They've been suffering. They've been hurt. A lot of them went out of business. When the economy does come back, they're going to be busier than they've ever been. The ones that survive, because they're not going to have as much competition. And if they want to sell, their numbers are just going to be, they're going to be skyrocketing. It was just like after the Great Recession, by 2012, all the companies were just killing it because the competition was wiped out. The weakest of the weak were gone. So
let's talk about, why it was a decent year in 2020, even though inventory was down and the number of deals were down. What happened is since there's so much buyer activity and since there's so much money on the sidelines and since money was basically for some people free for 6 months, and that, by the way, those people got an extension of 3 months.
Oh, 3 more months.
God. It just
okay. I'm sorry, Andy. That's you know what I did today. I got on the phone and all the business owners all the people that I sold businesses to the last few years, that got SBA loans. I just called them and I just said, hey, David, just want to let you know that I know you got 6 months of your principal and interest paid last year for the SBA. Did you know that? First of all, did you know that there was a new round of PPP money? They all said yes. But hardly any of them knew that they got 3 more months of principal and interest paid. If they didn't know, since they already had that loan, they had no idea. So you buy a new business, you get 6 months. But if you have an existing SBA loan, it's 3 months, and they didn't know about that. So, I just think every business broker, just call your past clients because, your business should be mainly referrals, so that's how you get referrals. Plus they might own a business. So go ahead, Andy.
No. So what happened was this year was any business, quote unquote, the survivors, businesses that were doing well, that did want to sell right now, got either a premium price or they sold very quickly. And we were seeing, as business brokers in my firm, and some of the data at the BBF also reflects this, is that the bigger businesses were selling. Yeah. And so what we saw was increased commissions for those deals, and anything that we have that is good is kind of flying off the shelves. So I think that's part of our inventory. Not only are the restaurants gone, not only are the spas gone and anything tourism related, but what's also gone is any decent business because it's sold.
No, so you bring a good business to the market and you price it right. It's gone. It's going under contract.
It's going under contract. So as business brokers, what we saw in Florida, in my Florida offices, were that, we did much less transactions, but our commissions were either, we had our best year in South Florida ever. So even
The commissions
beyond
are higher.
2020, right? Because the commissions were higher.
You got to
'Cause we
love
got some
that.
bigger deal.
You got to love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I mean, listen, again, I feel very blessed, lucky that we as an industry are surviving, and we all have clients that were in the restaurant business and or in some tourism related business. We have a lot of cruise industry down here in South Florida. So businesses that were supplying cruise lines, food, you name it, uh, dry cleaning. I mean, you think of the dry cleaners. I mean, how many of us are wearing clothes like this every day and taking them to the dry cleaner anymore?
No, I know you're in your boxer shorts and that's it. So,
but
Underneath that.
I feel bad for my dry cleaner because he's doing a lot less
Yeah.
dry cleaning these days. So I think there's a bunch of industries that were really hit, and they are going to come back. And this is a note out to some of the business brokers out there. Also, is it might be time for those businesses to list,
Yeah.
because listen, people, I am getting phone calls. We are getting phone calls from buyers, and buyers are probably willing to ignore 2020, especially as soon as these vaccines start really kind of affecting the economy. They certainly haven't yet, but once the increased demand comes out, people have already come to me and said, "Hey, I want to open up a 3-restaurant chain. Do you have any empty stores? Do you have anything?" Because they're trying to time this. They're trying to come into this, getting in with landlords, and talk about getting deals done, right? Were the landlords a little nicer last year?
Yeah.
I mean, finally.
Yeah, finally. Yeah. You know what? During the Great Recession, as the Great Recession was coming back, I actually made it through because a lot of business brokers got out of the Great Recession. I sold a ton of restaurant asset sales during that time period. And, buyers, sellers just ran out of capital. They ran out of money. That they're hurting financially, and buyers were looking at it and going, okay, I feel like the recession is going to end soon. I can pick up a build out on a restaurant pretty cheap, the equipment, blah, 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 blah. And they were buying it. And, a lot of them sold. And I think that could happen,
Yeah,
in a couple more months. I think you're gonna start seeing that.
Yeah, and we haven't seen a ton of asset sales. I mean, yes, there's plenty of asset sales as always. I think
Not
something
yet.
like not yet, but we
I think
haven't
what you said is
seen.
like when they start seeing the vaccinations take place and things like that.
It
I think
wasn't.
that you're gonna
It
start seeing
wasn't.
that.
It certainly wasn't like 2009, 2010, 11. You know what was different then? The banks were out. They were
Yeah.
out. Money was not available to anybody. And think about your money in your home, right? Think about your borrowing power back then. So 2009, 2010, stock market down, your
House
home
prices
equity
down.
gone.
Yeah.
I mean, so like everybody was, it's a different thing. And you didn't know when it was going to end. Here we are in a pandemic. We know this is going to end. Did any of us ever imagine this thing lasting a year? No, I could tell you that because I had my daughter's roommate move in because I thought it was going to be a few weeks. Didn't expect her to be here for
Yeah.
for months. So I think while this is incredibly awful, it's not like 2009 and 2010 as far as business people are concerned. Now, we do have a little bit of more. We're a little bit luckier here in Florida because and whether or not you agree with his plan, he kept the state open much more than some other states. I do get calls. I got a call yesterday from a restaurateur in Connecticut looking to move to Florida specifically because he's like, you guys are open down there. I want to move to Florida.
I've heard that too. I've heard restaurant owners up north wanting to move down here because of the same situation.
Yeah. So we are lucky in the fact that we've taken a position that we're going to keep the state open for the most part, and we're going to kind of power through this. Whether or not that was smart, we could have that argument politically, but we won't do that here. So,
yeah.
But again, as an industry, we've been pretty lucky through this thing. And I do have offices in London, and they're having a really tough time, and they are shut for right now. But they still had a good year of selling businesses as well, because people are unemployed and they want to buy businesses, and that's what we do. I mean, we're helping people do deals and take their piece of the American pie of entrepreneurship. So
Yeah. And, I wanted to address this too, because we talked a lot about spas and restaurants and things like that have been really hit hard during the pandemic and everything. But there's a lot of businesses that I've seen over the last couple of months where their 2020 numbers are actually much better than they were in 2019, 2018. I brought a business to the market today, actually, that they had the record year of, and they're a site preparation company. But that's the industries, and I think what happened. I think when like you said, when the pandemic hit, we were all like deer in a headlight. Like, what do we do? Because you couldn't really pull from any experience that any of us had ever experienced before, because we never experienced a pandemic in our lifetime. And I think that the brokers that started to come out of the pandemic and ended up doing pretty well in 2020, because I've talked to brokers that have done extremely well. I think a couple things, and I think you touched on it, Andy, but I wanted to reiterate it, is one, they changed the type of businesses that they targeted. And then two, they, just because of the things they targeted, they started targeting, higher priced businesses, and those businesses, had better numbers. And everybody knows Steve Mariani. I'm sure everybody knows Steve Mariani from Diamond Financial, but he has this on his website, and he emailed it to me, and he has the 10 businesses that he's recommending business brokers list. Lumber and building suppliers, I never even thought about that. Residential services such as spas and pools, tree services, home constructions, painting, lawn, pool businesses, security services, plumbing, HVAC and electrical businesses, in-home healthcare providers, pawn shops. I didn't think about pawn shops. That's an interesting one. CPA firms. I've never sold a pawn shop either, though. CPA firms, exterminating and pest control and manufacturing. So, that's, again, this is going to be on YouTube. So if you want to watch this video later, if you want to email me, I can forward you this. But Steve Mariani, if you're listening, thank you so much for sharing that.
yeah, I mean, listen, in fact, I brought out the example earlier. We're selling a business, and they want to discount 2020 because the business is doing too well. And it happens to be in the construction industry, it's construction supply. And they feel that everybody's fixing up their houses right now, and business is booming. Well, I want to argue with the valuators, saying you can't discount 2020 100%. First of all, I don't think it's going to slow down here, especially in Florida. People are moving to the state. We've been gaining 1,000 people a day, 300,000 people a year. We might have a little bit of a spike this year, but we'll continue to grow, and construction will continue to stay strong, especially with low interest rates and things like that. So I think the construction industry, yes. I mean, you had to pivot out of selling restaurants and hair salons, perhaps, and get into selling landscaping, pool services, up north, things that do plowing. We even forget what they are.
Yeah, snow plowing. Oh my goodness.
So so there's plenty of businesses that will continue to do well. But you listen, I think there's going to be a bounce back in a lot of industries coming forward. Um, you know, I think there's going to be a bounce back somewhat in retail. I think people are going to want to get out and go stroll in those, outdoor malls. I think people are going to want to travel again. I think those tourist places. I'm on the board of BBX Capital, and they own It's Sugar, and they own a lot of places in tourist places. And of course, those revenues are down in those places, but they're going to bounce back because people are going to want to get back out there.
And they're going to bounce back hard because people are going to be wanting to get out and go out a lot, and there's going to be less competition. So I kind of feel like we're at that kind of crossroad, like the essential businesses, the businesses like I just named off to Steve Mariani, that's what we've been targeting. You've been doing really well with it, but and these businesses haven't, these restaurants, things like that, they haven't been doing well, but that's going to start, we're going to start to see that climb. So I agree with you. I think that, probably in the next couple of months start targeting those type of businesses again. I agree
Yeah,
with
listen, I mean, I think it's a lot like 2012, right? So 2012, 13, like when we're starting to turn around. But the funny thing is now we know we're going to turn around. This is going to
you. Yeah.
turn around. I mean, unless some virus comes out that's, that the vaccine doesn't handle. We're going to get a bunch of vaccines in arms and it's going to turn around. People are, and listen, you could already see it out there in a lot of places that people are ignoring this anyway. I mean, so, but I think there's still a large part of the population that is, sitting at home. I even think some of the seniors, we were talking about this, we had a meeting with the governor of the state of Florida on Wednesday morning, and they were talking about vaccinating 65 and older here in Florida first, and they've done that. And they said, those people have been very good. They've been sitting at home,
Mm-hmm.
and they believe that the restaurants will start getting full again because in fact, I was talking right before this. I was talking to someone who had just gotten their first shot, and she's already like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to start going out to restaurants again because they say I have 50% immunity even with the first shot."
Wow.
And I won't get as sick. So I think we're going to start seeing this bounce back in the economy pretty quickly. So, you got to start educating the buyers too. And listen, isn't that our job? I mean, people always ask me if you need to be a great salesman in business brokerage. And I'm like, no, people come to you
Yeah.
that they want something done. They want it sold. They want it bought. You need to be a good psychologist.
Right. I mean, buyers and sellers, that's what they're asking right now. Sellers, they're, hey, what, is this a good time to sell my business right now? And I'm like, it's a perfect time to sell your business. If you want to sell your business in the next couple of years, this is the time to do it. SBA, the lending is more aggressive than ever. And I talk about the 6 months, the waiver of the SBA fees. I explained that. I talk about the 90% guaranteed by the SBA, by the government. I go through all that and then I say, you know what, you got to also look at it from your standpoint as well. And I tell them there's less buyers on the market right now, but there's a lot less businesses that are quality businesses out there too. And they're getting snapped up. But also, we could, and I don't want to get into politics, but we could be looking at an increase in taxes going into 2022. So if a seller is looking to sell in the next couple of years because they're looking to retire, a 7% difference in taxes could be a lot of money.
You know what? I just wrote an article that's with my editor right now that was why 2021 is a great time to buy and sell a business. Because somebody asked me, I said that on my little video blog the other day, and somebody said, "Can it be both?" And I'm like, believe it or not, it for the first time ever, it is, because of the low cost of money, because of the SBA program where you could get 6 months free. It's a great time to buy a business,
And it's a great time to sell.
and it's a great time to sell because of all those things. And, we haven't brought it up yet, but the baby boomers, we've been predicting the seller tsunami for years of the baby boomers, and they still haven't let go of their businesses.
Oh my gosh, no.
For the most part.
Yes. I call people that I've talked to like 3 years ago, and they're like 72 years old. And I'm like, they're like, yeah, I want to sell because I want to retire. And they're like, I'm not ready yet. And I'm like, what, when are you going to be ready? And now I'm starting to talk to sellers. They're like, I'm really starting to think about, I need to really actually do it because I don't want to leave this burden for, my kids or my wife or whatever it is. And, so.
Yeah, I think some of those people didn't sell for a few reasons, right? So, I think a bunch of those people didn't sell because 70 is the new 50. I mean, people are in better shape, and by the magic of pharma, they're feeling better, and so they continue to work into their late lives. Number two is, again, you can't do much with your money, right? So you get a few $1,000,000, and what are you going to do? Try to buy a bond and make 4 or 5% and try to buy safe money. So they'd rather just hold on to their businesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're addicted to that, cash flow every year. And then lastly, it's just everybody's been hesitating to come to the marketplace because they've been running their businesses pretty easily. Like you said, it's been pretty easy to run the business. The economy's been good. I really don't need that. it's been full employment. So yeah, it was hard to get employees sometimes, but now, they went through 2009, 2010, the economic downturn, and now they don't want to, go through another thing.
Yeah. They went through
Whatever it
September
is.
11th. They went through the Great Recession. Now they're going through the pandemic. At some point, you go, you know what? This is happening every 7 to 10 years. I'm done. I just want to move on.
Yeah, and Glenn makes a great point. He just says, they didn't change their behaviors to recover from the recession. And the funny thing is, like, I
Yeah,
changed my
that's a good point,
behavior.
Glenn.
And I keep telling, people that, when the pandemic hit, as unprepared as everybody was, I was very prepared in the fact that I kept probably 4 or 5 times the amount of cash in the bank ready to go, because I went through 2009 and 2010, staying up at night going, are we going to make it through this thing?
Yeah.
So I just had a bunch of cash in the bank because I'm like, I'm not going through that again. And so
Yeah.
when this hit, I was ready to sit and, I literally did a cash flow analysis of my own business and said, I could sit here a year if I need to.
And my company, and I'm a small company, but my company and personally, I keep 1 year of expenses for company, and I keep 1 year personal in bank account. And people might say, you're losing money, you should be investing it, but I'm glad I do. And I learned my lesson from the Great Recession. I learned my lesson from September 11th. I said, never again. Never again. And
yeah, I think, you and I are about the same age. I think you're a little younger than me, but I think we're all going to grow old, and, our grandkids will hopefully be looking at us going, why are you so frugal? So just like we said about our grandparents, because they were children of the Depression, and they, I knew billionaires. I know 2 billionaires that, bought used cars until they, because they were children of the Depression,
and I think you're touching on something I didn't even think about touching on. For the business brokers out there listening, I mean, I think it's the best thing to do is just reduce your, you get past this situation, and you don't know when the next recession is going to hit. Get rid of your credit card debt. Buy used cars or pay off your cars. Just reduce your, all your debt as much as you possibly can, and then have a good chunk of money set aside that you can live off of.
Yeah, sure. Being in the business brokers industry, part of my training program, I think my first slide on how to be successful in this business is to save money for rainy days, because this is a strange business. The one point I was trying to grasp is I forgot it along the way, but talking about the baby boomers again, is that, I think that we need to tell them that there is going to be a tsunami at some point.
Yeah.
And the tax laws may trigger it, or them coming out of this horrible, year might trigger it. But when all those businesses do come into our inventory, and our inventory goes from 4,000 to 2,500 to 10,000, and it becomes a buyer's market, and there are predictions that there are not going to be enough Gen Xers to buy the businesses the baby boomers need to sell.
Andy, that's a good point. I never even thought about that. I never thought that far down the road. That's really excellent insight that you provided right there.
So
I never thought
you
about
should
that.
be telling your sellers, if, again, not only is 2021 a great time to sell for all the reasons, free money, taxes may be going up, but when the baby boomers do come to the market en masse, and I am 1 year into the Gen X, right? I'm going to be 56, and 1965, 66 is the last baby boomers. Those folks are in their late 50s. The oldest baby boomers turned 70, 75. So they're going to have to sell. And there's going to be a huge transfer of wealth. We've been talking about it in the business brokerage industry. And listen, if you're my age and Jim's age, or you're sub 60 years old, and you're going to hang around this business for another 20 years, which I guess is the thing to do, because I have 3 octogenarians in Transworld. So here in Florida, you can work in this business. It's a lot of fun, and people do it for a long time. You're going to be able to do well over the next decade or so, at least. I mean, with all these baby boomers, needing to retire.
That just goes to show you that you need to watch the YouTube videos 42 minutes into it to get that kind of advice. So, that's why you got to watch the whole thing, because that's something I never thought of. So yeah, that's good. Um, so Andy, what do you see? Is there anything that we've experienced as business brokers that has changed because of the pandemic that you think is going to continue moving forward? It's going to stay with us moving forward. The way we do business as business brokers.
Yeah. Listen, I think certainly the way we sign documents has changed over the last year, and we've all gotten very proficient at using electronic signatures. So I don't think that's going to change. Obviously the use of video and video conferencing. I think that we're only going to continue to leverage those kind of things. And so I think communications, maybe calling isn't is kind of gone by the wayside, and now all this instant messaging and things. And I even see getting away from texting and things like Teams. Being able to fire up a chat either in Teams or in Zoom. I mean, it has been pretty groundbreaking, and I don't think that's going to change. So I think there's going to be a more the ability of business brokers to specialize in certain industries and perhaps sell businesses around the country. We still have licensing laws to get over, and so I think. But again, we saw what happens when something like um, Uber comes into. They change the laws, or they have to change the laws. So, I think we'll continue to see that kind of things. And I do believe a little plug for beef that we've been trying to get um, the stock uh, the stock compliance laws changed. And I do have hope, even in a Democratic Congress and a Democratic Senate, that we may be able to stick our uh, our small bill into one of the bills that are coming up. And I think the reason why is, again, it's a bipartisan thing to be able to give entrepreneurs the ability to raise capital or to sell their businesses in an easier manner. We started this off by saying there's no stock market for small business. I predict that someday there will be, not just to sell your whole company, but to sell shares in your company. Because again, if we're going to be able to invest in things, wouldn't you like to invest in a business that you think's a winning business, and the entrepreneur? And don't you wish there was an easy way to get in on something like, if you thought Anthony Coal Fire Pizza was a great thing, or Orange Theory was a great thing? Wouldn't it be great if you could have invested in that and made money with it? So I think those things will come to pass on one day.
That's very interesting. Is there any, in case we hit, no, first I want to say this to everybody that's listening out there, I sent Andy some questions that I was going to ask him today, but we never got on the phone and we never talked, or by email or phone, about our positive outlook for 2021. So this isn't a video of, like, try to pump you up as business brokers. I think it's honestly how Andy feels, and it's honestly how I feel. I really honestly feel that this is going to be another great year for business brokers if you attack the industry properly. Last year was great if you had made the adjustments that you needed to make, and that's how life is. You got to make adjustments in life. Things are going a certain way. You got to adjust and make. But it's going to be another good year. I really believe that, and Andy really believes that. So this just isn't a raw video that doesn't accomplish anything for me and Andy. We don't get anything out of it. But Andy, is there anything that maybe you can't answer this, but is there anything we should keep our eyes on as business brokers, that if this happens or that happens, we're probably going to start to see a downside happening in our industry? Is there any telltale signs that you've noticed over the years, or is it hard to tell?
I don't, it's hard to tell. I mean, I think, we all look to reasons why people sell, and I always tell people don't sell usually for money. I mean, I know that tax things will try to move some people, but even if they have to pay 10% more in taxes in capital gains, is that really going to stop someone if they have a life-changing
All that's going to
experience?
do is change it from them selling in 2022 then into
Right.
2021.
So I think some people may make that move, but um, and Mike Shea just chimed in about social media too, and that's something that has certainly changed our industry. Listen, I think what could happen that is a negative. I guess there could always be things that happen politically that makes it more difficult to sell a business, or you would need they bring in some sort of special law that taxes those business transactions. We had once upon a time the state all of a sudden want to charge us sales tax. This is decades ago. I don't really see anything like that coming. Money could be scarce again, but again, we would just have to rely on seller financing more. But that may hurt some of the bigger business sales. So things like that. I mean, the SBA running out of money. We've seen that before over the years. That certainly has hurt the way we've done business. I don't see anything on the horizon that's really going to hurt us. There could be some big piece of technology that, kind of Uberizes this business. Again, I think that's hard to do. If anything, one of the points I wanted to make is, for fellow business brokers, is this business is getting harder. There's no doubt that advertising is getting more expensive. Insurance is more expensive. There are more legal issues and ramifications in the business that you have to be wary of. Employment law continues to hurt us. Some of us that have employees, that could change the business brokerage industry. They could decide that every independent contractor needs to be an employee. I mean, I think all those things would make us pivot and do other things. In some of the foreign countries that we deal with, you cannot hire an independent contractor. You actually do have to pay them. And so it becomes very hard for franchisees to hire people. So, things like that could absolutely put a damper on things. But, that's why I think we need to continue to work together as an industry. I mean, we have to battle things like that. We have to, the stock sale compliance thing. A lot of people feel like we're breaking the law on some levels with even simple things like promissory notes. I take a different approach to that. But, I think we're all better off if we work together to clarify those things and make sure that entrepreneurs who build a business have a reasonable way to monetize.
And I got to have you and Mike Ertl on, and I love Mike Ertl. I got to have you and Mike Ertl on at some point talking about beef and that whole scenario. I've got two more questions for Andy. If anybody that's listening right now has a question for Andy or myself, raise your virtual hand and I'll answer the question or I'll put you on. So just raise your virtual hand if you got a question for Andy or myself. Andy, I know anybody that's listened to me on my videos knows I'm a big proponent of co-brokering, and I know you are too. And since I have you on right now, I want to take the opportunity, if you could just plug co-brokering for 60 seconds from your point of view.
Well, listen, first of all, it's the right thing to do. I mean, whoever thought of a marketplace that isn't free and open? I mean, imagine if IBM woke up tomorrow and said, well, the only way you could buy IBM stock is you have to open up a Merrill Lynch account and you have to deal with a Merrill Lynch representative. What would happen to the share price of IBM? It would go through the floor because it's not easily traded. Things become much easier and the market grows when things are easily traded. Second of all, it's the right thing to do for your seller. We're here to help buyers and sellers buy the right businesses and find the right buyers. Being greedy, there's only one reason why you won't co-broke is because you're greedy. I mean, yes, I understand that it shouldn't be perhaps a 50-50 split at all times. I had a phone call this morning of someone in New York that had a buyer in Louisiana that wants to buy a business in Florida. And I'm like, listen, I mean, at some level, if you want to work the transaction because of electronic signature, because of
video calls,
video conferencing, they could probably get it done. But, again, it's not equal parts. But, to tell someone that will give you 10% of the full fee, which is 20% on one side, which is the usual referral fee, that's not going to get the job done for people. And that's just it's not the right thing to do.
All right, great. And my last question is,
and I'll put one more thing. we can either co-broke or something else is going to come along to co-broke for us. Much like the taxi driver said, nobody else could pick up at the airport but us. And Uber comes along and says, no, not only are we going to let anybody get picked up at the airport, but anybody could drive them and anybody could become an Uber driver. And it disrupted the marketplace. We need to do that first. We need to have that seamless marketplace for people to buy and sell businesses.
Yep, I agree. I did a whole video, by the way, anybody listening who wants more information on co-broke, I did a whole video on it. It's called Let's Rumble, because I had a little duke out with somebody from Canada.
And the last thing about co-brokerage, it works.
It does.
Look at the numbers. Florida, we've been co-brokering for 40 years now, and the numbers work. More businesses are sold, better marketplace. It just works. And if anything was anecdotally, is that Murphy and Transworld came out of Florida.
Yep.
Because we had a better business brokerage system.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. And we've had a lot of things start here, like peer comps and a lot of other things that started here, because of that. So that's excellent. Andy, I got to say, you've got such wonderful insight. I know you do your own videos and do podcasts and stuff. Where can people find you if they want to listen to you?
Yeah, I mean, we have a podcast called The Deal Board, and it's everywhere on all the podcast things. And I'm out on Facebook at 5:00 on Fridays trying to wrap up the week, and it's just it's fun stuff. And listen, again, I'm an advocate for the industry. I like working with all of you. I think I think we were talking before this. I think it was just before this, but I think we've barely scratched the surface. I've asked many people in the world, what percentage of business deals that are transacted do you think business brokers handle? And I'll just ask you that question. What percentage?
Of what?
Every business that ever sells,
mm-hmm.
What percentage do you think have a business broker involved?
60 to 70%.
I think that's wildly optimistic.
Is it really?
I think you can put it in the chat, everybody, but I think it's more like tops 33%. Wow. And I've asked a bunch of lawyers and things like that. And let's go with your 60%. That still says 33% of deals, or it's 60 to 70%. Still 33% of the deals or so, over a third of the deals. And we got some 50s. Some people say it's 15 to 20. Lots of, I agree with Andy, probably a third or less. So I 50%, listen, it's 20%.
20%. Yeah. Yeah. And I got to tell you, I mean, like when I go and talk to a seller, hardly ever am I up against another business broker, number one. And number two, when I'm marketing advertising to business owners, a lot of them don't even know what a business broker is. You know what I mean? It's just like, we got to do a better job as an industry saying, hey, this is who we are, this is what we do, and this is why you need to use us.
Before I came to Florida, I had a small pasta shop in Hartford, Connecticut, little family business we bought, ran it for, I don't even think we had it for 2 years, but we bought it, I'll tell you the numbers, $45,000, sold it for $65,000. The only way I knew how to sell it was put an ad in the paper myself. I put an ad in the paper, I found the buyer, and I sold it. I didn't even know there was such a thing called a business broker. By the way, I vastly undervalued it. I didn't even get 2 times. So I should be ashamed of
So even if you would have paid a broker,
I would have made way more money.
Exactly.
I didn't know how to price a business back then, but I came down to Florida and I started looking to buy business. And the only reason I realized there were business brokers was they were advertising everywhere. So. Yeah.
Andy, okay, so anybody that's listening right now, just go on to any of the sites that have podcasts and search for what is it called? Deal Board.
The Deal Board podcast.
Deal Board, and they're great. I listened to him before. He's obviously, if you listen, he's excellent. Andy is extremely knowledgeable. Anytime Andy talks, you need to listen. So I encourage you to follow him on the Deal Boards. And Andy, again, I want to really say thank you, not just me personally, but on behalf of the industry. Not that I can talk for the industry, but Andy, the thing is like, you are not just about Transworld. You are about the betterment of our industry. I've worked with you for the last 6 years on the state board of the BBF. I know how you operate. I know the way you think. We've had tons of conversations over the years about different things, and you care about this industry, and it shows. And I don't think everybody realizes how much you've done for brokers in Florida, and you've done for brokers across the United States. And so I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge and your insight today with brokers that are not Transworld members. And I hope everybody takes that advice and they use it to the best of their knowledge, best of their ability moving forward.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. And thank you for taking over for being state chairman of the BBF. But now we are both in the enviable position of being past chairman. So
there you go.
Yeah.
So, hey, I appreciate everybody joining today. If you have not subscribed yet, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'd personally appreciate it. Plus, that way you're not going to miss any upcoming videos. And until next time, work hard, work smart, and keep making those buyer-seller connections. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.